The rat race is defined as an endless, self-defeating, pointless pursuit. Over the last 100 years, it has become entrenched in Western civilization. It keeps us impoverished by consumerism, distracted by entertainment, and deceived by false promises. Things like, invest 10% of your money into a regulated fund and you'll be able to retire rich. That may have been true in the 1960s, but it's certainly not true anymore. And yet this false promise is continually propagated by the establishment and still accepted by most people. Becoming aware that you are trapped in a game that's rigged against you is the first step in escaping the rat race. But very few people are willing to take action to change their lives for the better. Ask, are you one of them? Let's look at how we are trapped in the rat race. It starts at birth with beliefs inherited from your parents. As soon as you were born, you were immediately stamped with a barcode, otherwise called a social security number. From then on, you're conditioned to take part in the rat race paradigm, and almost everyone has become either a consumer rat, someone who believes they will find happiness, respect and fulfillment by purchasing clothes, shoes, watches and other items. They spend their disposable income on such items to impress other people and try and make themselves feel good. Or a savings rat, someone who believes that if they work hard, obey the rules, budget carefully, invest 10% of their income in a regulated fund, they will be able to retire rich in 40 years. The consumer lives for the weekend. They dread Monday mornings and look forward to Fridays when they can go out and get drunk. Then the dread of starting the working week starts to arise again on Sunday. If you're a savings rat, your cheese is the promise of a comfortable retirement decades in the future, a future you may never live to see. And even if you reach that age, it is highly unlikely you will have accumulated the nest egg you expected. The reality is not dissimilar to buying a lottery ticket, although it's promoted by the establishment as the only sensible option. And the pressure is on everybody to choose one of these two paths in this economic servitude known as the rat race. But neither path serves you well. It's all about serving the establishment for their benefit. Perhaps you think,
that's just the way things are.
But the truth is, it doesn't have to be that way. You can escape the rat race, but first of all, you must become aware of all the ways you have been trapped. Some of the weapons used against you include the education system, advertising, the media, promoting consumerism, debt, work, obedience to authority, false promises, and taxation. Let's start with education. It's no accident that you went to school Monday to Friday for 18 years. That's the system conditioning you to go to work Monday to Friday for the next 50 years. All levels of education condition you into thinking this is normal. They tell us that intelligence equates to being able to memorize and repeat learned facts, and that such behaviour will be rewarded, just like scientific experiments with rats. Very little value is placed on imagination and creativity. And essentially, the purpose of school is to teach us how to be obedient little rats. With our ability to think creatively and critically severely curtailed, we're left smart enough to do the work they want us to do, but not smart enough to question those in authority. Consumerism. As children, we are conditioned to associate happiness with toys, sweets, chocolate, and so on. As we get older, those toys become more expensive and often require financing, things like home entertainment systems, jet skis, cars, whatever floats your boat. To a lesser or greater extent, we all believe that somehow having the big house, the fancy sports car, or the latest iPhone will somehow make us happier. We fall for it time and time again, even though deep down we realise there is only fleeting pleasure from such purchases and no lasting happiness. The truth is, we do not own our possessions come to own us. And what's worse, most people can't even afford to buy this stuff they buy to impress others. So they borrow, not realising that looking rich is very different from actually being rich. Debt keeps you trapped and enslaved to the banks. The average person barely has enough money to live on as their outgoings exceed their income, and a huge portion of the population is in debt. The average person owes hundreds of thousands of dollars on a mortgaged home and usually has car finance, furniture finance, bank overdraft and credit card debt. The more obligation and responsibility you have in terms of debt, the more trapped you are in the rat race. My advice, get out of debt as soon as possible. Most surveys done on the matter have shown that only around 15% of people say they enjoy their job. What that means is the average person works for 5 days a week in a job they don't like, so they have 2, supposedly, free days at a weekend. So for 40 hours a week or more, they are governed by rules set by someone else as to what they can wear, what time they have to work, and what they do during that time. That is how the majority of people spend almost every week of their adult lives. How did that become the norm?
Wait a minute!
In the 1960s, the Milgram experiment illustrated that people will obediently follow those in authority, even when it goes against their own judgment.
Rock, house. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer, horse.
Oh. Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
Refuses to go on. The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
And even if the consequences can be extreme pain or even death to another human being. Have you ever asked yourself, why is it students are rewarded for memorizing and repeating facts in subjects that bear no relevance to their lives? Well, the answer is they're being taught to obey authority, not being taught the skills to enhance their happiness and overall well-being. We're also deceived by false promises, such as the promise that if you spend tens of thousands of pounds on getting a degree, you will find a rewarding, well-paid career and have a good life. The reality is, most graduates find themselves saddled with unaffordable debt in careers where non-graduates can just as easily progress without the burden of debt. Another promise: invest 10% of your income in a regulated fund and you will be able to retire rich in 40 years. The reality is, investing 10% of what you earn will never provide enough to retire on comfortably. Yet this is the only method of retirement planning endorsed by the establishment. Einstein once stated that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world, and compound interest is incredibly powerful in theory. But all those compound interest illustrations your financial advisor showed you are, to be frank, complete bullshit. They're based on a load of unsupportable assumptions, such as your investments will grow at 8 to 10% a year, compounding over time, when the reality is your returns will be no more than 5% a year on average, and possibly a lot worse if your investments are subject to bad timing. And crucially, the compound interest calculations used by these financial advisors never seem to take into account the devastating effect of inflation. You would have to have a pot of over $1 million, which is impossible for most people, just to have a realistic chance of having a retirement income of $50,000 a year. But in 40 years' time, when you've saved that $1 million, due to the government's continually printing more and more money, that $50,000 a year is only going to be worth a tiny fraction of what it's worth today. To give you an example, the British pound has lost 95% of its value since 1970, and in the USA, you would need over $768 in 2023 to buy what only $100 would have bought you in 1970. Yet, this invest in mutual funds message that the establishment pushes again and again, and most people blindly follow it. The truth is, the only people getting rich from this advice are the fund managers and financial advisors. But as long as the authority is recognised as legal and legitimate, people will obey, especially when there's no shortage of support from the media and so-called financial experts. But it's just not true. It's a carrot dangled far in front of us, and the carrot is rotten. We've all been conditioned to believe that tax is fair and reasonable in a civilised society. But how much tax are you willing to accept as reasonable? What if I told you that recent research has shown that over 80% of what you earn in your lifetime ends up back in the hands of the government one way or another? We're taxed on what we earn, what we spend, what we save, and even in some cases what we are given. Here are just some of the ways we're taxed in the UK. At what point does taxation translate into slavery, where we're working solely for the benefit of others? 85%? 90%? Why do we just seem so ready to accept that the government has a right to take as much of our money as it likes? Why aren't people out with placards protesting? Why do we accept the rat race as just the way things are. The truth is, give most people a job they find bearable and pay them just enough to provide a moderate level of comfort, and they won't ever be motivated enough to change their life, even if they do feel unfulfilled and dissatisfied. And the establishment knows that by allowing a mediocre level of comfort and providing a never-ending flow of distracting sport and entertainment, they lure us into a state of complacency, and we remain trapped in the rat race month after month, year after year. You will never break out of the rat race if you play by their rules. If you want true wealth, power and freedom, you must recognise this game for what it is. You must understand that it does not serve your best interests and make the decision to play by your own rules. Now, unless you're an exceptionally talented athlete, musician, writer, inventor or similar, the only realistic way to escape the rat race is to start your own business. But not just any business, because if you start the wrong one, you'll be just as trapped as any wage slave. The only real way to get out of the rat race is to start a freedom business. And the key to creating a freedom business that will provide you with a lifestyle you want is to understand what qualities that business must have from the start. The essential elements for a freedom business are control, a high barrier to entry, a proven need in the marketplace, time and income separation, so that the revenue generated is not dependent upon the time you spend in the business, leverage, the greater the better, and a scalable customer base. So the questions you must ask before starting any business are: 1. Am I really in control, or is my revenue dependent on a third party, such as a web platform, social media platform, a supplier, franchisor, head company, or maybe just a very large customer? Number 2, how difficult would it be for someone to replicate what I'm doing? Because if the barriers of entry are low and other people can easily do what you do, competition will grow, it will become fiercer, and your profits will be squeezed. Number 3, am I certain there is a proven need for my product or service? This is where most businesses fail. They follow what the business owner loves to do, and they haven't checked that there is a proven need for their products. Question 4, do all areas of the business have the potential to be systemized and automated via human resources, machinery or software, so that you no longer need to work day to day in the business? Question 5, how far can the revenue of this business be scaled? Can it go from 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month, or maybe even $1 million a month? Question 6, can the company's value be scaled into 7 or 8 figures? Find out what's the typical industry multiple for a company like this on sale. Question 7, how deep is the potential pool of customers? How many people could you reach? Is it a local business, regional, national, global? Question 8, can it be replicated or expanded beyond your local area with new branches, perhaps franchising or using the internet? Question 9, how many units can you realistically sell each month? Question 10, is the profit margin acceptable to you? And will economies of scale mean the margin increases as the company grows? Only with a freedom business can you generate large amounts of income on autopilot and build a valuable asset you can sell for millions.